Welcome back, entrepreneurs and future business owners. My name is Corey A. Wilson, and I am joined by my lovely partner, co-host, and wife.
My name is Nikisha Wilson.
And we'd like to welcome you back to the Wilson Podcast. Now for today, the topic is something we've chosen, which happens to be in the news at the moment with one or two businesses, which we will talk about. But it's something that I don't believe a lot of entrepreneurs speak about because they don't get this far in their business. So the topic that we are going to speak about today, have our opinion on today, is the real questions you ask or you need to ask yourself before scaling your first location. Okay? Now we've owned 2 brick and mortar businesses.
We have.
We didn't get the chance to scale, but
So I wouldn't say that. I mean, they're 2 completely different businesses, but we own 2 businesses at the same time. So I would say we definitely went from having 1 brick and mortar to 2 brick and mortar businesses. There were 2 completely different industry, but I would definitely say that's similar because now it's running 2 businesses at the same time.
True. But the topic we're going to talk about today is scaling the same business.
Okay.
And the ideas and the reason why you should or should not do that. All right. So like you said, we did own 2 at the same time, which is tough because those are 2 separate verticals, 2 separate target markets. Everything is different. Everything is different. So with this, let's just talk about one business and scaling that. So one of the questions, what question do you think should be answered before a person, a business owner, entrepreneur thinks about scaling from their first business to a second business?
I think the number 1 question is, can you leave your business for 30 days and it run itself?
Yes.
Like without everything falling apart. That's 1.
Oh, okay.
That's it. I was going to throw another one in there, but you asked for 1. So I'm trying to,
Okay. So yeah, I think that if your business cannot run by itself, you cannot scale.
Right.
And some business owners that are in the market right now are scaling too fast. And we'll talk about that example that I was mentioning earlier, which is the Uncle Nearest.
So I didn't think you were gonna jump to Uncle Nearest. I actually thought you were gonna talk about Slutty Vegan.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about both.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about the Uncle Nearest expansion first.
Okay.
Because of the market that she was in, which is liquor, not a very familiar vertical.
That's a niche.
A niche of a niche.
Yeah.
And not too many entrepreneurs are familiar with how that works, right? And I think you have to have a circle of entrepreneurs, business owners that are doing that business to kind of educate you and give you some of the underlying foundational things that need to be taken care of in order to run that business more effectively and efficiently. And we've heard from her own mouth of what was the standard, which was to open a business, expand in that state, and slowly but surely expand into neighboring states and then a larger group of people she can serve throughout the nation.
Right.
But what she planned on doing, from her words, is to rapidly expand, which I don't think that really was the downfall as far as what's going on now with her business. I believe she was doing a good job. We found out that it is her financial department and manager that kind of messed those things up. But that expansion so fast, I don't think she was able to understand how the first business ran or the first few places where she was expanding her business into liquor stores, how that process worked in order to get a grasp on how was she making money. Was it really beneficial for her to expand at that rate at that time? And she has had other businesses too. But again, this was a different business, kind of like us. We had a coffee shop and a laundromat, 2 different businesses. She was writing books. She's a professional speaker. She has other talents. But with this, she's bold, she's forward thinking, she has the vision, and people believed in her, right?
Right. So
in that regard, what do you think she possibly could have done different, if anything?
So I'm a researcher, right? So I like to research like kind of the backstory to understand characteristics and traits and see how that kind of influence. And I definitely think that she grew too fast and she didn't take the advice from the experts that suggested a plan, like a layered plan to grow. And I saw an interview where she stated that she wanted to expand within 2 years. And experts in that industry was like, that's not going to happen. And she was like, I proved them wrong, right? And I think that was an interview with Forbes. And then now I kind of look back and I understand why they said not to scale that fast. Because when you scale that fast, what happens is you start to take your eye off the ball. And the ball is the finances. And when you take your eyes off the finances, that's when things go array. Because at the end of the day, you're the CEO. Yeah. You're the one where everything, if the business is successful, it's because of the CEO. If the business is not successful, it's because of the CEO. Yeah. And when you grow so fast, you take your eye off the ball. And I think one of the things that need to be put in place are systems. Like you need systems so you can measure KPIs. And I'm not necessarily saying you're the one that's doing the work, but you're the one that should be having meetings every single week to go over these numbers. You're the ones that should be having conversations. And then you need to have other people in place to just dot the I's and cross the T's to make sure that nothing is being missed. And when you grow too fast, you're so focused on growing that you lose the attention on the foundational fundamentals that's necessary to change a business. And I think Uncle Nearest is a great example, because most of the times when we talk about scaling, we're thinking about smaller businesses, but this shows you that you can have a business that's valuated at $1 billion, which is unbelievable, that still don't have foundational systems in place. So I definitely think this is a great case study that business owners, institutions, and organizations should study.
Yeah, and I also think one of the other things that was detrimental to her business is that, like you said, she wanted to grow throughout the nation within 2 years, right? She also had a process and a plan, but with that growth, what I think we would say as advisors is to master one part of your business first. She didn't have enough time to master a niche that she got into. She ignored the advice of individuals, business owners that were already in the game.
Right.
Which, I mean, you should take advice from the people that are already doing the thing, especially if they're successful at it.
Right.
Especially in a niche, because there's so many layers, like you said, and not mastering each part of the business, or not. Some people will say that it's not Fawn Weaver's problem, the financial operator, it was his fault. He was stealing money, which he was, from what the recent document said.
But if you
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you have things in place, you should be able to catch that. Like, it went so far and so deep and so in depth that it definitely shows that no one was paying attention.
That's
if you're making $100,000 a year, you should have some things in place. And now, when you go from making $100,000 to $500,000, you need to adapt, right? As you grow, you need to adapt and put more things in place to make sure you understand what's happening in your business.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to drive home was that people were saying that it wasn't her fault that the business went down. It was the CFO's issue. And what I was getting to was what you were saying is that no matter what happened in whatever department, she hired the talent.
Right.
And since she hired the talent, she's responsible for the talent and everything that they do. Now, is it her problem that she did not oversee the talent and what they were doing, the hires, the employees, and how they were working in their space? Yes, definitely, because you have, like you said, keep your eye on the ball. And that's something that it has to be taught to a degree. Learning on the go, as you would say, meaning learning as you're doing it, you need consultation. You need advisors. You need someone that's in that space that has done it so they can identify the things that are going wrong that you may not be catching. Because like you said, it is a niche and it's a way different business than every other business. You have the winery. You have the location where you have the property. She's building on the property. She's expanding. So why she's expanding? Not why, but when she's expanding, she's utilizing assets that she doesn't even know she has. I'm not even sure, and you're right, how does she understand they're getting the money for the progress and the growth and expansion of the business and not understand what's being allocated as an asset to get these loans? I know she didn't think, from what the documents say, that she was getting the loans on the merit of the business's finance because she didn't do taxes since 2018. Now, outside of the operation and everything, and this is not a shot. It's not a shot. I'm just saying that at that level, there is no excuse. That is
irresponsible.
And it's embarrassing because, again, she wasn't the one that had to hand in the forms and do the paperwork and documentation, but she is overseeing. And that's, if you have other businesses, you know how important Uncle Sam is in the IRS. They do not play with that money.
I think when you start to grow and you decide, and of course, Fawn Weaver have an amazing story and an amazing history, and she has overcome a lot and built her business. But I think one of the things, and I'm mentioning Fawn Weaver, but I'm saying in general, like even for me, a lot of times you scale and you expand yourself based on ego. And opportunities, right? Or opportunities. And I think for this specific situation, I think it was more ego than anything. And your ego can lead to your demise. Even we're just, I don't know if we're going off track. I don't know where we're going with this. But even with the receivership, there comes a point where you have to say, I need to step back and let the experts step in. But when you're saying with your own words that experts told you not to do something, they gave you the advice and you're not taking the advice. With a company that's making that much money, you should have an entire team around you giving you advice in different areas. And you also should be auditing all the different areas. But like you said, Corey, if taxes weren't done since 2018, that speaks for itself. And there's no reason why you should be, I'm gonna say book tours, and I know we're kind of honing in on her, but you shouldn't be doing book tours. You shouldn't be doing whiskey tours. You shouldn't be doing anything if your taxes have not been filed.
And I'll say, not to pounce on her, but to say that in our journey, our entrepreneurial journey, there were some things that we missed.
Oh, absolutely.
In our first brick and mortar business together, the coffee shop, we lost that business. Right? We had it for 3 years. We did the best we could with what we knew. We didn't have any mentors. We didn't have any advisors.
Well, we did have an advisor.
I'm sorry.
And I didn't listen to him.
Same thing, right?
Yeah.
But it was a much smaller scale.
Yes.
I mean, much smaller. So I think that is a piece of learning on the job. And we were able to lose that business. And simultaneously, we were running the laundromat because we actually bought
So the laundromat was purchased first. And
then we ran the coffee shop.
Yeah, so the laundromat was purchased, right? And after we bought that building, it was like an entire process to get construction loans and whatnot.
A year and a half and some change. Yeah.
And while that was happening, an opportunity came up to take over a cafe downtown Newark. So, I was like, hey, Corey, it's only this much. And we took advantage of that opportunity. And actually, one of my mentors at the time said, Nikisha, you're doing too much. Like, you need to focus on one thing. And I was like, no, but Newark is on the up and up. And he was like, yeah, but it's too early. It's going to take 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And I wanted to do my own thing, and I just did it anyway. And as a result of that, we ended up, like Corey said, losing the cafe.
And again, I guess that would be our instance of ego.
That definitely was ego.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I say that to say that as entrepreneurs, we do make these mistakes. But what we want to suggest and why we're having some of these conversations is to bring awareness around these mistakes that are made. Learn that most entrepreneurs that are really have their heart into these things, they keep going. They fall, they reassess issues, they find people that can support them and that are much smarter than them to influence them, give them advice, and support them in moving forward. And I think the only way you can do that is being transparent, being coachable, and then taking the action on the things you're being coached on. And I don't know if it's entrepreneurs that are just starting out that think they know more than everyone, or if it's a cultural thing, or if it's I want to prove to the world thing. Because
I think it's a combination of all of that. I know for me, there was definitely some ego involved, especially when I owned both businesses, because everyone was like, well, she owned a laundromat and a cafe. But I wasn't paying mortgage, but we won't get into that.
Not today anyway.
And then when we lost the cafe business and we only owned the laundromat, one of the things I kept saying to myself is, I need a win. Like, I need a win. Like, I wanted a win. So there's that piece. And then there's another piece. When I first started the businesses, I wasn't aware. Like, I was in la la land. I was like, okay, I'm just going to sell some coffee and pay the rent and pay employees and everything's going to be nice. And it wasn't, right? And by the time I woke up from that slumber, from that denial, I was in court trying to prevent them from locking the doors. Yeah. So I think it's a combination of all of this. And there's a certain level of humility you have to have when you decide you want to be an entrepreneur. So I think what I would say is my lessons is be coachable. Have a system. Like, if you don't have a system in place, if you don't have a repeatable system in place, if your company cannot function without you, then you shouldn't be looking at a new location. The only thing you should be working on is creating systems
for that initial location. And again, it takes time. When you don't start a business with a plan, as they say, you plan to fail. And I think that we were having a conversation today because we went to a pitching event where people were pitching their business for $20,000, right? And no matter what the business is, you should always have a plan. You should at least have and identify what your finances will look like when you start the business, what you will need for startup costs, okay? The actual startup costs and what you actually project. You actually need to understand your burn rate, meaning funds that are available to help sustain the business if you do not even make $1 that month? How long can you survive without making any money? Also, your credit. Your credit should be something that should be worked on before you actually start a business. We talked about this in another podcast where we said about 66, 70 something percent of Americans are financially illiterate. And if you're financially illiterate as a regular citizen, not an entrepreneur, not a business owner, you're going to carry those bad habits into that business. So entrepreneurs, future business owners, work on your personal credit. Understand what that is and ask as many questions as you can to get that right, because that will be a direct correlation to how successful and how you manage your business financially in your business moving forward. So I think that piece is really the missing piece. A lot of businesses, they don't just, die. They run out of money, some say. But they run out of money for a few reasons. They didn't plan right. They don't have efficient operations, which means they're leaking money in how the business is run.
Right.
And they're not really targeting or marketing well enough to draw the traffic. But again, I'm saying that to say these are small pieces. These are individual support blocks that should be focused on, like you said, to support the business, but each one of them can drain the business if not set up properly. Right? Okay, so what else can we talk about on expanding? So, like you said, if you want to expand, the business should be able to run without you for at least 30 days. Right?
Yep, and I think some businesses, and our business was that, right? Some businesses are ran based on the personality of the business owners.
Yes, definitely.
And what I've learned is you can start to create the culture that you want within the business, but it can't just be based on your personality. When we owned the laundromat, we sold the laundromat, and business went down after we sold it. And I know that's because a lot of the customers were there because of my personality.
Yeah, and I think that was part of, you were creating a culture in that area, right?
Yes.
It was great customer service. There was great customer interaction. We worked to please the customers. There wasn't any back and forth. There wasn't any negative comments. There was a few times where pieces of clothing were lost and people had choice words to say, but we handled that respectfully and we handled that as professionals. But you have to understand that these things come into play. No business is perfect. You're just going to learn about some of the things that aren't working right in your business. And the goal as a professional is to fix those things in the process, make them better for the next customer or client. And again, the goal is to make everything as operationally sound without you so that the business can run as best as possible.
Yep.
Another reason why you don't think a business should expand is, I would say, tell me if you're wrong, I want you to expand on it, a person's bandwidth. As far as what can they handle initially. Let's say the business is running well. Let's say they can walk away for a month, and the business runs just fine. Bandwidth. What do you think bandwidth plays? How do you think bandwidth plays a part as an entrepreneur as far as expanding in that capacity? Like, what should be some of the things thought about and capacity for the business? What do you think that should look like?
I don't know. I think if you have systems in place and you can leave that business a month, 2 months, the business is generating revenue, the business is generating a net profit, you have an accountant in place, like this baby is running well, right? You can definitely entertain a second location, but I think sometimes what happens is when the business owner leave that initial location, the quality falls off unless they have some things in place and if they grow too fast. I mean, I know some businesses in the community we live in that expanded 1 location, 2 location, one of them even 3 locations. And now you're running 3 locations and the first location is inefficient. So I think we underestimate what it takes to run 1 location. And then 2 locations is just a game changer. You definitely need to make sure you have enough capital to hire the people you need to manage the locations. If you have the capital and you can hire these folks, and then you also have to think about why. Why do you want a second location, right? If you can, I'll give you a prime example. When we had the laundromat, there was an opportunity to get a contract. I think the contract was like $300K, something like that. And we actually won the contract. And when they came to do the walkthrough, they were like, well, what if something happens to this location? You don't have an emergency location. No, I don't have an emergency location. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about partnerships. But even for that opportunity, it wasn't worth it for me to look at a second location because we didn't understand the first location enough. So it was better for us to actually walk away from that opportunity than to entertain opening a second location. So I think you have to plan it out. You have to plan out the time. You have to plan out who's going to manage this bad boy. You have to plan out how you're going to split your time between the multiple locations. There's a lot that goes into 1 location, and there's even more that goes into when you're getting ready to scale.
So do you think as far as culture, right, when it comes to a business, to a expanding business, you should have a culture for the business, for the initial one. And once the culture is set, once the operations are set, once you have processes in place, leaving that first one and then creating the bandwidth to start the second one from ground up, because if it's a culture that you want to create, more than likely you are going to be the one to actually bring that into fruition, right? You should be the one to actually push that narrative because it's you.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think you can create the culture and train the people to train the trainers per se, right?
Okay.
Let's look at Panda Express, right? One of the things Panda Express does is all of their new employees get personal development training, right? That's what I know of. That's externally, amazing. Right? I don't know what happens internally, but that tells me that anyone that works for them start with personal development training. You can nurture the culture. You can even, a client that we have opened up a coffee shop, and the employees from one of the franchises actually train the employees at the new franchise. So he's bringing the culture from a franchise that's already open into this new franchise from ground zero. So now they're not picking up habits and traits and behaviors from anyone else. They have SOPs. They have how you greet your customers, eye contact, communication. If something happens, then you do this. So I don't think it necessarily have to be the business owner to create the culture, but I think the business owner do have to have some solid strategies in place in order to build the culture and keep the culture.
Yeah. And I like what you said there. Train the trainers. That's something I think that you should also think about when expanding, investing in your people. Like some of us start the business and of course you're thinking about turning a profit. But if you have a burn rate of, let's say, 6 to 8 months, you have time to actually create that culture. You have time to train the people, invest in them, give them benefits that will motivate them to not just stay at your location or at your business, but be empowered. And I think that is a lost art too. When I was working at Verizon, that was one of the things they started us off with a 4-week training for the final 4 weeks, initial 4 weeks.
Right.
Start 1 week on learning how to climb a pole. The next 4 weeks following that, or 3 weeks following that, it's all about the technicalities of how to actually create things in the business, how to run lines, how to, again, like you said, greet customers and clients, how to deal with angry customers, how to deal with angry clients, and what can be done as far as from a managerial standpoint,
Right.
how they can be compensated, and again, the culture and the processes. What's the standard? And I think, again, that is something that is missing as well, because we're so tied up with just trying to get the business off the ground, and I'll hire these people. There is no training. We'll just talk it out, and we'll figure it out. And the time of just figuring out business is long gone because of technology. You need support. You need processes. All AI is consolidating processes,
right,
and making it easier and smoother for business owners to operate. It's just that there's a disconnect because they don't know how valuable AI can be for their business, because they're ignoring the other things that will actually help build and grow their business. So I think that there should be, before a business owner starts, an underlying education, which I think is in finance, but now that we're talking, I think the processes of the business, no matter what it is, should be highlighted, and people understand that so they can seek out each niche compared to what they're doing and what the business is asking for.
So what I wanted to ask you was, how did you learn the culture when you were at Verizon?
Well, the culture was, I guess, implemented via the initial, I guess, onboarding of the business, and the people who were already there in the business, like my coworkers,
right?
They gave me an insight of some of the things that went right in the business. Luckily for Verizon that I worked for, they were a unionized, for the employees, they were a union business.
Right.
So I was able to understand employee rights. I was able to understand, to become a union delegate.
Right.
Understand the conversation between management and employees, and what to ask for as far as our contract, and how we can leverage the things we did to get better terms on our agreement. So I think the employees and my coworkers really drove home that whole narrative of what we can do, as opposed to what we're just being told to do and just following rules blindly without having any guidance.
Right.
So that was just another level that opened my mind up, because until I worked at Verizon, I had no awareness of employee rights.
Right.
I know you weren't supposed to be treated a certain way as an employee, which made me leave one of the businesses that I was working for. But when I worked there, I understood that, I could have actually sued these people because they were mistreating us, or they were mismanaging us. There was a lot going on. But I think that was a great conversation of what we had about talking about what you should look forward to, or what you should have in place before you scale one business to multiple businesses. Because again, it's not easy. We all need support. We all need guidance. And I think we all need a chance to conversate with someone who's already doing the work or in a business, to kind of understand what they should be doing or what they need to scale and build and grow their business. So with that being said, we're going to close out with that and say, you can be an expert and be the best at what you do, but without exposure, a network, and social proof, you are invisible to your business, customers, and potential clients. So with that being said, my name is Corey A. Wilson.
And I'm Nikisha Wilson.
And this was another episode of the Wilson Podcast, and we will catch you on the next one.